So John, what we're doing here is we're actually looking at, we set 3 goals for this talk, and we'll introduce it here in a second, but really what it was going to do is provide insight, generate interest, and then start a conversation. Mm-hmm. So welcome to AEC Trends. My name is Riddell. This is brought to you by Software. I have the pleasure of having John Aid with me again, my co-host almost on all of these. So it's board. We found him on the street, and I was like, "Hey, you look like you know. Come on in." Before we started, so when I was coming to work today, I heard that it's National Donut Day, and as a result, what we're going to do is we're going to give out a $25 gift card at the end for Krispy Kreme. So before we move forward, I have to tell everyone
That's a lot of sugar, man.
I know my favorite donut is Boston cream, so I can't get that at Krispy Kreme. And the worst is when they don't put the pudding in it, but you get like the frosting. That is the worst. But what is your favorite donut?
My favorite donut? I told you, it's the Krispy Kreme that's filled with the raspberry filling. It's like sugar stuffed with sugar.
You know what? Hey, whatever floats your boat.
You didn't think I'd answer that question, did you?
No, I hoped you would have answered that question. So what we're going to do is today we're looking at knowledge management. And in doing this, I found a great quote, and we'll read it to you here. The ability to learn faster than your competitors may be the only sustainable competitive advantage you have. This was Ari de Geis, and he's the author of The Living Company. I think this is a really fitting quote for this topic because really, as the industry is changing so quickly, technology has advanced so fast, how we disseminate information from the top down and vice versa is critical for survival. Mm-hmm. So in doing this, there's actually, and we're gonna start right away. And what I want to show you is this diagram or this chart that I found. We kind of talk through it and then talk through things that we see, what work, what don't work. And in doing so, this next group, there's a company, they're known as Knowledge Architecture, and they are really taking knowledge management seriously. Christopher Parsons is actually the founder of Knowledge Architecture. And in doing so, let me push this real quick so we can start looking at this. They created a periodic table, and I think it's just their way of easily identifying parts of a corporation that they could use to analyze. Mm-hmm. And so as we look at it, we kind of see how it's broken up. And what we have is on this far left side, we have things like intranet, social media, stuff like that. That's really the technology portion of what knowledge management would be. And in fact, a lot of times if I asked you, are you practicing knowledge management? Your first instinct may be to say no. But then when I say, hey, do you have an intranet? Do you participate in social media? How do you transfer information? You realize you do have a form of knowledge management. So we don't need to touch on that one so much but this next part. So this next part here is really what we're going to get into, the knowledge management. From here, they talk about how we can actually manage or disseminate the information. And I think that's really where we want to probably start kicking off this talk in what are we seeing, what works, what doesn't work, but how do we see this sort of going through on a knowledge standpoint?
Well, and as you and I have chatted in the past or leading up to this talk, there's learning management and there's knowledge management, and there's a little bit of crossover. And knowledge management, I think, to a lot of people is conveying something, a piece of information, but it's not always about that. There's also the experience or when I don't know, it's such a broad topic. I don't know where to even focus on it, but let's talk about where we are now at Applied Software. We've had a lot of changes, but we want to maintain the culture.
Yes.
And not everybody has the same benefit because we have grown so rapidly and we have a lot of new people. They don't all have the same benefit that, like I had said, of my 11 years here. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't even have that benefit. But you get some of that from me.
Through osmosis and talking and
from sitting right outside the president's door.
Yeah, that certainly helps. It keeps me in trouble and out of trouble.
And so that kind of knowledge, like you said, it tends to be more casual when you want to make it more, not regimented in a bad way, but available. right? You want to make sure that everybody has the same benefit, because then they'll have a better direction and want to be a part of that direction as part of a company. And that's just talking about the culture of the company.
Yeah. In fact,
knowledge takes on so many different forms, how you do something, why you do something.
And when I was sort of looking through this topic, and I found that the number one thing it says for success, so for knowledge management to be successful, is it has to align with corporate strategy, but it also has to align with corporate business culture. So just like you were saying, that for me to be able to understand and know why I'm coming to work every day, I need to know why this company was started in the beginning. So that's really step one for a successful program, is how we're going to pass on that knowledge. We talked a little bit about how the recession has actually created a huge hole and a gap in the industry. And part of this talk is mainly to raise awareness, but then how it came across was that I graduated in 2009, so it was really tough to find work.
There was a terrible time in our industry.
There was a lot of people getting laid off during that same period of time. So now what has happened is, during that period of time, a lot of architects, they left. They never came back they went and did something else. And so now there's this giant knowledge gap. And the one thing I do want, while we're still looking at this is, you could assess yourself, be able to see where you fall on the different parts. The whole right side of this really is on the actual management and the process that's trying to be developed. There's another component, and then we'll circle back to that R&D component. And it was something that I kept seeing come up over and over and over when it comes to knowledge management, is having sort of dedicated resources that not only are doing research and development, but are dedicated for the program. Thoughts on how that we're focusing on knowledge?
Well, I think in your intro, you kind of really hit on it, is that, changes are search that and make sure that you're not missing the boat, when everybody else may be getting on it, is important, and sometimes the research will take you, it has unintended consequences where it'll take you in a direction that you didn't think it was going to take you. And all of a sudden you discover something and just make a conscious effort to get inside your organization or as part of your practice, or to change a process, because you realize that even though that's not what you were looking for in your research, you kind of found it as a tangential thing, and now you've made yourself better.
Yep.
I mean, we're talking in, words here. We're not really talking about a very specific example, but
it's a very broad example that
think about how that has even come into the learning management and has opportunities for knowledge management.
Yeah, and I have a couple examples that we can look at in a few minutes that sort of touch on that, because when I set up a talk and I'm like, hey, this problem, and then the research I do, I realize that that's not the problem that needs to be solved. The problem that you really solve is, are we a culture that believes in knowledge management? Are we a culture that believes in being able to sustain past that first generation? This was applied to AEC, but then all of a sudden this topic applies to everyone. I mean, internally here, just like we talked, we have that same, how do we make sure that I knew why this company was founded? How do we pass that information along? And, ultimately it does kind of come back to a technology that helps us to get there. But sort of circling back to that idea of the gap in the industry, what we're seeing, or what I believe we're seeing, is there's a huge void of the people with your level of experience and then my level.
Well, there's two examples, and I'll get to the second one when you get to the whole the graph and the knowledge, what is the technical
or development data. And in fact, we can flip over to that because we can kind of talk through that.
Let's keep in the background, but I thought of another example that I didn't bring up earlier. So in our organization, we have a sales side, right?
Yep.
Because we sell product and services, and we have a technical side, and all our technical from industry. So we bring a lot of experience, working as architects or in engineering or in construction, whatever it may be, fabrication, and we bring that to applied software to really help our use that. So that's a form of knowledge management that we rely upon, if you will, to make us a better company for our customers. But we haven't done that as well for a lot of our sales staff. A lot of our sales staff don't come from the same industries that they serve. And and we've talked about this off and on, and I think it's something, I'm kind of talking about something, laying it out there for everybody to hear that we should be doing is, and I'm just going to use a coined phrase, but we talked about at one time having fireside chats. And what I meant by that was setting up a time where, almost like this venue, where we're just broadcasting to people who want to learn more about architecture, the way I've experienced it, or the way Matt Dillon or Christopher Riddell has experienced it, and tell some stories about it, because I think a lot of knowledge management also is very tied up in storytelling.
Lessons learned as well.
Right.
I know where I came from before, we try to have that sort of post-mortem of any project where we do a lessons learned of what worked, what didn't work, not just on the project, not just with the detail, but then internally as a team, what worked, what didn't work. I think, we've talked about collaboration on some of our other talks, and these things are all sort of intertwining, because collaboration is a huge component for knowledge management, because we got to find a way that we can sort of push the information down and up. I mean, it has to be supported from the top at leadership, but then information also flows from the bottom up.
The one thing I get really, because of how much we're surrounded by social media and the immediacy of information, is knowing what is the information we need to pay the most attention to.
Yes.
So there's a component of this that I haven't seen anything really address it, and that's how do you make sure that the quality information is the information that's really getting to the people who need it.
Well, what's interesting is, I mentioned knowledge architecture a little while ago, and I watched a lot of their videos, and a lot of their videos, they have new ones coming out. There's a ton from 17 on, and there's some in 2018, but it's a topic that's incredibly important for the survival of just any firm in general, but it's something I think we find ourselves getting too busy to attack. So part of it is, one, raising awareness of, hey, this really is critical, because like that first quote said, your best competitive advantage really is how you transfer that information, how quickly you do it. The industry is quickly changing, whether it's with schedules are getting more compact, fees are becoming less and less, and how we pass that information on is super important. So, I don't know if I can get this to come back, but that graph that we had up here, it really is actually a pretty compelling graph. Now, this was from a presentation that EWBR did, their architecture firm in Minnesota. And in fact, they are the same ones that presented this VR thing we're going to look at in a second. So it sort of sets the stage for them, but it's actually a pretty compelling graph where it's that technical graph. But it's not just technical, it's development. So this could go both ways. You were well-versed in the software, which is kind of an anomaly, but you very easily could be the individual with all the experience and less of the software experience. And then me, I easily could have a lot of the software experience, but none of the or I'm higher in a role than I really have my experience, and how we fill that gap. And so that is something that we're continuously having to try to deal with, because it happened to me as well. I'm quick in the software, that means I know stuff, and now all of a sudden I'm running projects that I shouldn't be running. So I have a huge gap in my knowledge. And then on the flip side, someone similar to you might have all the experience, but then can't translate that into the software.
But I've always seen that as an opportunity. And I think a lot of firms really missed the boat on leveraging that opportunity. you got the person that's kind of grown up with the technology, gravitates towards it, becomes very proficient with it, but really doesn't know how to put a building together, let's say.
Yep.
And again, it could apply differently to different industries, but the same thing is true. They don't have enough experience to really do it. And so they're either trying to figure it out on their own. And then you got this guy who doesn't, who's probably managing the project, who doesn't know the technology that's being used to put it together, but he can put a building together because he's done it dozens of times. And the two really should be, have an opportunity to really help each other.
Yeah, I mean, I thought those are the strongest partnerships, because I can glean from your experience, you can learn from my software experience. I know there'd be times where I would hear someone say, "Hey, this person needs Revit training. They don't know how to do a detail." And my first question would be, "Well, did they use the right tool?" That's all I care about. They use the right tool. All right, then it's not Revit. It's they don't have this architecture. And so that is something I do see a lot of us getting confused with, is people are confusing knowledge about architecture with knowledge about the tool. And we're missing the gap there. So I've even looked at how I could train people to practice architecture using Revit. So I can teach how to use Revit, but I really want to teach how to practice architecture, and this is just the tool that we use.
It's been fun for me and for some other guys on our team who have actually taught not only instructors, but more importantly, students at a collegiate level, because they're so used to getting just technical training, right? What we call the picks and clicks on the software. And when they realize that, I'm an architect, or, I've worked, in a mechanical shop or something, whatever it may be, and they can actually ask a question, how you do it. We're actually starting to now teach them practice.
Yep.
At the same time, we're teaching them how to use the tool in practice.
Yes.
Which has so much more value than the picks and clicks.
I agree. And in fact, if I was trying to give any advice to any, say, BIM manager out there that has their own internal training program, is incorporate as much of your actual practice knowledge into that training, so it is focused on, this is how we practice architecture. We're going to use Revit to do it, but this is how we practice architecture.
That reminds me of something else we chatted about before, and that's the success of technology in an organization. When you're introducing a new technology, whatever it may be, we talk a lot about implementing BIM and Revit in organizations. It really can be anything. And how is that successful? Well, again, it's change management, it's knowledge management, and obviously learning management. It's really those three components actually work, in concert. But for anything like that to be successful, it really takes a top-down approach.
Yes, it has to be supported from the top down.
I mean, an idea can bubble up from anywhere, and it often does, especially when you get younger, more enthusiastic, more kind of excited younger people on the team that bring different experiences and different ideas and different ways of thinking. But at the same time, the people who have kind of matured through the ranks, they're the ones who have to make the decisions. They have to be just as excited as the people who are going to ultimately implement it for it to be successful. Because without it, it struggles. I've seen it time and time again. It just struggles. So there's some knowledge management there. There's some learning management there, but there's also change management. Yes. Sorry to introduce another phrase.
No. Well, or look up, what actually does a successful program look like? So I can't necessarily tell you how you should build it in your firm, but I can tell you at the end of the day, it needs to be, one, supported from the top, and two, it needs to align with whatever your values, your culture, and your business strategy. If it's misaligned out of any of those things, it won't be a successful program. But what we're finding is it's critical for firm survival. So sort of the last topic to look at is where we can actually introduce the technology, is how we can use VR. Now, I think I shared this video with you, and I think it's pretty cool. I mean, it's a toilet, so it's only as cool as a toilet can be. But again, this was presented by BWBR, architecture firm. They use this for their educating of their younger staff. And so what we're looking here is we're actually looking at a VR environment that they've created. They've created 3. This one is more of a explanatory environment where I can go through and I can click on different aspects of the room that we're in. And from there, I get dimensional information. So I can see how big do my grab bars need to be, how high can my sink be off the ground, where does everything need to be placed, but also we can introduce other things like written code information. This one is a little different one, and what this video is actually showing is how they compare codes. So where they have a bunch of different codes, maybe it's ADA, but maybe it's something else that they're looking at, and they can see what are the differences between those two. And then they can identify the different dimensions that account for that. And in sort of a virtual world, they get to see, okay, how big does this room actually feel? What does it look like? And then we have one more video here we'll see in a second. And even in this video, you'll see the geometry will actually change. Mm-hmm. And then this final video that we're looking at here, this video is more of a test. So you as a younger professional would be able to go in here and using, some VR, whatever it is, you can say, hey, I think this dimension is wrong, or hey, I think this dimension is right. And it'll actually let you know what is right or wrong. It'll move things. And I mean, it's really a great, one of the cooler toilet examples I've seen, but it's a great application for how VR can be used for learning purposes.
Well, it's more interactive, it's more interesting, and I think you learn better because you're actually interacting with the environment instead of just, answering a question on a piece of paper or, on a PDF.
Or reading the code book, I mean, you were talking earlier about, examples in the electrical field.
Yeah, we had a union came to us to help with their learning program, and some of the content they had developed was using VR to set up scenarios that typically in the field are kind of high danger scenarios. Mm-hmm. Let's say they're dealing with some sort of high voltage, and this allowed the person to, still understand that it's a high risk situation, right? They had to be very careful what they did, but they weren't going to be penalized with their life or injury in the learning process. Yep. And they could get some of that knowledge where time, these days we're going to execute and build things so rapidly that we just don't always have the time available for the mentor or the person who's helping educate the intern or the apprentice. Yep. And really we're finding replacements for the whole apprentice mentor thing.
I mean, I see
not a complete replacement, because I still think there's huge value in that.
Well, and in a way, the mentor would be the one sort of feeding the information into that VR experience. Because where I've seen it fail also is you have all the experience, but you also have a ton of responsibilities. You're too busy to be mentoring me. So some of it is organic. I sit near you, but I can't bother you all day long. But
you manage to. But.
Yeah, I can be annoying. But we could use VR to supplement that time. So now it's not a full burden on you as the more experienced one.
But fill in some of those gaps.
Yeah. So, we talk, I could see applications for details. We could do 3D mock-ups, and we can go into our VR cave in our office and walk through how a detail works, have maybe one of our QA/QC people talk through it. There may be a way of presenting lessons learned through VR, perhaps, where we could have seen, what happened, what could have happened, what did happen, type scenarios. I do think of all the technologies that we look at when it comes to knowledge management, there'll be some sort of clerical or administrative technologies that sort of keep things organized. But I think VR has the biggest play in the space for being able to help educate or transfer some of that knowledge. Because then we can sort of tap into, things that, who knows, maybe one day we get to a point where there are holograms that are then also helping us for that education. So, I always know the corporate culture because that founder is now a hologram and is always available for presenting that information to everyone. We're pretty close to wrapping up. You have any other sort of big thoughts on something we feel like we want to share? It's a broad topic. It's something we could keep coming back to over and over.
I think everybody can always do better at it. There's not, it's not a whether you do it all or do it well. It's doing something, right? I think everybody should put some effort into kind of prioritizing what type of cultural things, what type of technical things, what type of process things that they want to make sure that people in their organization benefit from, because it'll help them as individuals, and that's how it should be promoted, right? It's not just, hey, you got to do this. Hey, this is going to make you a better,
this is why,
part of the company and a better person, even in the open market, right? If you present it that way, then you're adding value to them as well as to the company, which is in fact the truth. But also, we're creatures that always need to be learning.
Yes.
Right. And if we have goals, it gives us something to achieve. And then I'd say the third thing is to make sure that you kind of acknowledge that achievement. And the only way you can do that is tracking it.
Yep. It was interesting you brought up that one point about, getting started, because one of the things I saw when I was reading through what to do, and one of the top things was just start doing it. Mm-hmm. Because if you wait for the perfect moment or all of the technology to be in alignment, it's not worth doing. But just me sitting at your desk is a transfer of knowledge. Mm-hmm. And so encouraging that so that we still work in our silos, but we can continue and just get going is one of the most important things that we can do. Mm-hmm. Just start doing it, and then you kind of go from there. And then another thing that you mentioned that was kind of telling is it almost goes all the way back to your recruitment process, because you want to recruit people or have people come into your firm that buy in to the culture, that are a good fit, part of the vision. So then when it comes time to now we're going to do this sort of knowledge share with you, they understand why it's happening. It's not a task that they're being asked to do. Mm-hmm. They fully buy it and get it. So, it's really something that once we get part figured out, I can see how it goes all the way back to the very beginning. And it's something that we keep in mind that when we're hiring, because we know that we got to be able to push this information down. Hopefully
technical difficulties. I don't know what you're talking about.
We're about to just do this with stick figures. So I did a gift card, right? So Alyssa, do we have a winner?
We do, and I hope I say your last name right. Dane Teagarden?
Sounds good to me. We're going to send a virtual gift card. Is that what we're doing? So, all right, Dane, you're going to get a virtual gift card. Congratulations. Enjoy your donuts. Don't eat $25 worth in one sitting. That'd be awful. I believe there's a link to register for additional webinars. So come back. We're going to keep trying to push these out. We're trying to come up with different topics. If you have topics that you want us to talk about, touch on, reach out to us. We're always open. Or if you want to participate, we're always looking to give John some relief so he doesn't have to sit here with me all the time. So we're always looking for guests and topics, right? I love to learn, so I hope that this helps everyone. This is really me selfishly doing this for myself, and we're just having people be a part of it. But anyway, we appreciate it, and come back.